This video will show you how to use your graphing calculator with some of the basics. We're going to use a linear equation and a quadratic equation and graph those as examples and go through these different topics on your calculator. So when you turn your calculator on, you hit the on button, you've got this key up here that says y equals, and that allows us to enter a function into it. Remember, a function is where for every x value you put in, you get out a y. This allows us to put the rule in for the function, and then we can take a look at the graph. So let's enter in this first one, the linear equation. Now when you enter in a fraction, you can use the fraction key, but you also can, whenever you do a fraction, put it in parentheses and just hit parentheses 2 divided by, here's your operations over here, 9, and put a parentheses, and that's the same as a fraction. Now this x, where you find that is, if you look up here at this key, this is an xt theta n key. One of those is even a Greek letter. You can ignore all those. It just knows, the calculator knows in this context, it's going to give you an x when you hit that, so it will be able to put that into the function as part of the graph. Now let's put the -8. Now there's a little negative here. That's an opposite. So like if you wanted a -9 or something like that, that's what you use. This is the operation of subtracting 8. So you want to use this one over here, not the little opposite down here. We'll show you later when to use that. So hit the minus and then the 8, and we've got our function rule in there. So what's very nice about this calculator, the miracle that it does for us, is when you hit graph, suddenly you see that line showing up. It will graph it for you. Now, if you want to look at that graph in different values, what we can do is we can look at the table to see what those values are. How oftentimes we do set up with a graph, we want to do an x and a y table to plot points. So to do that, what we'll do is look at the table here for the graph, and the table is listed right above the word graph. So if you hit this blue button, and then you hit the graph button, which says table above it, it gives you x and y values for this table. So as an example, notice there's -10 goes with -10.22. -9 gives you -10. Let's list that one. That's a nice number rather than a decimal. We'll put down -9, -10. Let's get a couple other values off of this table. Notice it gives me other decimals. You can just scroll either up or down to get more values. I'm going to scroll here until I get to 0, gives me -8. And if I keep scrolling down, I get 9 gives me -6. So let's put those values in here. 0 gives me -8, and 9 gives me 6. Okay, so those are our values for this table. Now, looking at this graph again, some of the other information from it is you can change what's called the window, you can trace, you can zoom in, things like that. I'm going to show you the trace button next. What you can do with the trace button is when you go back to the graph, you can hit this trace button, and what it will do is you can use the side to side button, and notice there are x, y values right there at the bottom of the screen that go with this graph. So besides looking at the table, you can use trace to see what x, y values go together. The difficulty with trace is it usually will give you a lot of decimals. It might be hard to find the ones that are nice, neat numbers like these for our table, but it does give you an idea what those are. So trace will allow you to go along the graph in different ways. All right, let's go ahead and use this quadratic to look at some of these other features. So if I want to get rid of this, I'm going to go back to y equals. I want to get rid of that function and put in a new one. Well, once you get to that y equals and you get it on the y equals there, if you just hit clear, it's going to clear off that function. Nice and neat. You don't have to backspace or anything. Now I'm going to put in x squared minus 3x minus 10. To do that, we go back to our x key. Now I want x squared. Now here is the squared key right over here. So if you want to square something, hit the x squared key. We'll put the square on it. Now I'm going to put minus, don't use the opposite yet. I'm going to put minus 3x and then minus 10. Now if you're not sure, if you did something wrong, you could always backspace and you could use this delete key if you wanted to. Now I entered it in correctly, but if you want to delete off something, you could just go back to that or type right over it, put minus 10. Now, if I hit graph, here's what the graph looks like. It's a parabola. It's got that U shape to it. But notice it goes a little bit below where my screen is. I want to see the bottom of the graph. If I hit trace, notice it will be, I can see where it's tracing and giving me values. And notice the trace disappears for a little bit because it's below the graph. Well, I want to see what's down there below. How you can do that is change your window. So when we talk about the window, this is going from, on the window, from -10 to 10 and -10 to 10. So if we look at the window here, it tells me what my minimum, the bottom x value, the one furthest to the left, my top x value, and then it's going by ones with the tick marks in between. I could do the same thing with the y's. As the bottom y value is -10, the top value is 10, and I could change those. Well, I want to change what the bottom was. I want it to go lower than -10, so I'm going to change that y minimum, let's say to -15. And now when I look at the graph, notice it shows me all the way down to -15, I can see the bottom of the parabola. Let's say I want to change more to it. Let's go ahead and change my window. I'm going to bring the top down from 10, and I'm going to change it instead maybe to a 5. And maybe we'll change the x values so that maybe it goes over to, say, let's go maybe from -7 to 7 instead. Hit enter to go to the next value. And then when I look at the graph, notice my x's are from -7 to 7. My y values are from -15 up to 5. It changes the window that I'm looking at the graph in. So the window is helpful if you don't see the entire graph, and you can see it now. If I hit trace, I can trace along it and see my different values, okay? Let's get a few values from my table. So let's go back to the second table here, and it gives me some x and y values. So let's go ahead here and we'll go with, notice it gets really high at -5 up to 30. So I'm going to go with some values I can see. So let's go -3, 8, -2, 0, -3, 8, -2, 0. Okay, let's see a couple more here. All right, so let's go with, notice it goes all the way down to -12 here. So I'm going to put, looks like 1 is at -12 and 2 is at -12 also. So 1 at -12 and 2 is at -12, and then I'll get one more value on the positive side to plot here for 1 and 2. And so let's put 5, 0. That's an intercept. So let's put that one down, 5, 0. That's my x's and y's. So I've got graphing points if I need them from the window. I can trace to get graphing points as well. I can use the window to change how I see it. If I want to go back to the original window, if you want to have it back to -10 to 10 and -10 to 10, that's our standard window that we look at. You can use for that, hit the zoom button and then go down to the standard, which is 6, and that automatically changes that window back to the -10 to 10, -10 to 10 for our graphs, so that you don't have to type in all those numbers. This will help you by doing linears and quadratics, being able to look at what the graph looks like by using these different features on your graphing calculator. It's an amazing tool to help you see these values.